Hello. So this week we are going to be talking about analyzing arithmetic and geometric sequences and series. And today is really going to focus on arithmetic sequences and figuring out what do we know about them. So last week you took some time looking at different sequences, finding out what patterns did you notice that were consistent with some and which ones seemed to have not so many patterns and which ones were harder to write, the sequences, the rules. So today we're going to be able to give you a little bit more information on that. And today and tomorrow you're really going to be looking at arithmetic or geometric sequences. So I want to kind of explain the differences between those and show you what those would look like. And then later on this week you're going to be able to choose between the two of them and also find some series with them. So the first one today we're going to talk about is arithmetic sequence. And you're going to notice here it says a sequence with a difference of consecutive terms called the common difference. So what that really looks like is that I am adding by the same number. So for example here, in our sequence it goes 1, 4, 7, 10. I can see between 1 and 4 it went up by 3. Between 3 and 7, 1 and 4 went up by 3. 4 and 7 went up by 3. 3 and 10 went up by 3. So that is constant, which is the reason it's arithmetic. It's a constant. And that is a difference between those two terms. And my common difference here would be a 3. And we're going to be looking for that a lot and help us out. The other thing you would notice if I was to graph some of these things, I would notice that anytime I was to graph my sequence, then I would have my graph would be linear. And if you think about that, that was one of the reasons we could write our equations in a number times my sequence term position plus or minus a number. So that's what it was looking like last week was all linear. If I'm looking at a table, remember my n is the position number. It is in the sequence. So I'd have my first term was 1. My second term is 4. My third term is 6 or 7, and my fourth term is 10. And this is the part I think that's most difficult sometimes is I'm actually looking for the relationship between this 1 and this 1, the 2 and the 4, the 3 and the 7. And my general rule is going to write what is that relationship between them. And then we actually have a formula for it, and I will explain this to you, and we're going to use it today. But my formula is a sub n equals a sub 1 plus n minus 1 times my common difference. So I want to explain these different pieces for you. So my a sub n, this is actually my term value. Sorry, my writing's not super great here. My a sub 1 is the 1 represents my term number. So this is the first term in my sequence, the first term value. The n is actually the position in the sequence. And you're going to notice that the n and the a sub n go together when we work through these, and I'll bring that back out to you. So this is the position of in the sequence. And then my D is that common difference that we find in our sequences. And when we get back at the end of this unit, we're going to actually talk about what these mean and we'll see them. All right, but at the very beginning of today's assignment, you're just going to tell me, is it arithmetic or is it not? All right. So let's get to looking at some of these. The first part here, we're just going to say, is it arithmetic or not? So we're looking for that common difference. So on the first one, I'm going to notice between negative 9 and negative 2, this went up 7. Between 2 and 5, it went up 7. Between 5 and 12, it went up 7. 7 and 19 and 12 and 19, it went up 7. So because this is constant and it's the same number every time, then I know that this is a arithmetic sequence. And we'd be able to pull that formula out and we can write the general rule for it. Okay, let's look at number 2. Number 2, we're looking at it. For 23 to 15, it went down by 8. But between 15 and 9, it went down by 6. And between 9 and 5, it went down by 4. And actually, I don't even need to do any more because this is not constant. So guess what? It is not arithmetic. So it's really not too bad to tell if something is arithmetic or not. All right. And then looking at the graph is a lot easier because I'm just looking to see if it is linear or not. And remember, linear makes a straight line. So number 3 obviously does not make a straight line. So this one is not arithmetic. Number 4 does make that nice linear line, so this is a arithmetic sequence. And you'll notice that on these, your dots are not connected. So if you look at that, my dots are not connected. A sequence does not connect. There's certain specific points in there as we go. All right, so that's kind of what telling if something's arithmetic or not. And then the bottom ones, we're going to write our rule for this. So this might have been the area where people found a little confusing or frustrating last week. But we're going to do 2 things. We're going to write a rule, and then we're going to find a sub 15. So that means the 15th term of my problem. So let's start by number 1. Let's start at the rule. Let's look at the sequence 7, 10, 13, 16. I'm going to look and see if it's arithmetic or what's going on with it. So I'm going to notice, hey, 7 to 10 goes up by 3, 10 to 13 goes up by 3, 13 to 16 goes up by 3. So 1, this is arithmetic, and my D equals 3. My common difference is 3. So we're going to pull down, now instead of us having to go through and guess this, we're going to pull down our rule. A sub n equals a sub 1 plus n minus 1 times d. And we're going to plug in the information that we are using in this case. So I know that 7 is my a sub 1. And I know that D is 3. And those are the 2 things I'm actually going to put in during when I write my general rule. If I'm given the sequence, I'm going to find the common difference, and then I'm going to write it. So my A sub n will stay the general rule for every sequence, the relationship between them. My first term, A sub 1, we said was 7, plus n minus 1, and my D is 3. All right, so if we want to, we can go ahead and we can simplify this. So we're just going to multiply that out by 3 here. So I'm going to do 3 times n is 3n. 3 times 1 is negative 3. I'm going to collect my like terms, and I'm going to get 3n. I'm going to put my like ones together, the 7 and the negative 3, and I get plus 4. So what we just did right here was we wrote the general term. Then they're going to ask us to find the a sub 15. So when I say a sub 15, what that means is I want to find the value of the 15th term. And yes, I could go back up here to the top and I could go out till I get to 15, but that's a lot more work than I have to do. I could just put the 15 in for my n here and work this out. So I'm going to do 3 times 15, because n is that position number. That means the 15th term. And then I'm going to add 4. And then all I have to do is work that out. So 3 times 15 is 45 plus 4. So a sub 15 my 15th term value would be 49. So if you work that out, when you got to the 15th term, you would get an answer of 49. I do want to point one thing out to you before we move on. Right here, last week when I had you guys writing things, I would often tell you that if this is a 3, that's going to be the number you multiply by. That will always work with arithmetic also. So if you forget the formula, you can always jump down to that also. But I do want you to be aware that there is a formula to help you write every one of those arithmetic sequences. All right, let's look at number 2. All right, so number 2 says we have 15 to 8, 1, negative 6. So we're going to look for what's going on here. So 15 to 8 is going down negative 7. 8 to 1 is negative 7. 1 to negative 6 is negative 7. So I know that my common difference is negative 7. It's arithmetic, and I have a difference of negative 7. The other piece of information I need is my first term. So I need to know my a sub 1 is 15. And then I can just plug that back into my formula. A sub n equals my first term plus n minus 1 times my difference. So my general term, a sub 1 is 15 plus n minus 1 times my difference of negative 7. Then I'll multiply that out. So I get a sub n equals 15 minus 7n plus 7. Collect my like terms. A sub n would equal, hang on, I want to put the other part first. I like to put the 7n first, so minus 7n plus 22. And now I'm going to find that second part. I'm going to find the a sub 15. So I'm just going to put the 15 in for that. And that would be negative 7 times 15 plus 22. Negative 7 times 15 would be negative 105 plus 22, as long as I'm doing my math correctly. Then the 15th term would actually equal negative 83. So I actually think you guys will like the formula for these as you get used to it. All right, let's look at those fractions and decimals. So number 3, now I would tell you if you don't recognize these all the like right away, hey, what's going on? You can use your calculator to help you figure these out. But I would take and subtract these two numbers. So I would do negative 5.4 minus negative 2. And I'm going to notice that this is going to go up by 3.4. So you usually subtract the second term minus the first term. So the one behind minus the one in front of it. So if I took negative 1/2 minus 5/4, I would notice that it goes up by 3/4. 1/4 minus negative 1/2 goes up by 3/4. So I know my common difference, it's arithmetic, my common difference is 3/4. Could you find your a sub 1, which is your first term, which would be negative 2, right here. First one in there. And then we're going to plug our information in to find our general term, a sub n equals a sub 1 plus n minus 1 times my difference. So a sub n would equal negative 2 plus n minus 1, and my difference we said was 3/4. And then I would distribute that. So a sub n would equal negative 2 plus 3/4 n minus 3/4. And if I write my term out, it'd be 3/4 n minus 2 3/4. And then we can find our a sub 15. So I want to find out what a sub 15 is, and I type it in my calculator. 3/4 times 15 minus 2 3/4. And my a sub 15 would be 17 over 2. Or that would be what? 8 1/2. All right, so you've got your general term, and then you've got your a sub 15. All right, last one. Let's look at that last one here. 2.3, 1.5, 0.7, negative 0.1. We're looking for our relationship here. This is going down. It's getting smaller, so it's negative 0.8. If I take 0.7 minus 1.5, I'm going to get negative 0.8. And negative 0.1 minus 0.8, I get negative 0.8. So it tells me I have arithmetic because that's common. I have my common difference is negative 0.8. And my a sub 1, my first term, is that 2.3. So then all we need to do is plug it back into our formula. So I'd really like you to get comfortable with that formula. I would make sure I have it, some notes or something as you go through, because you'll probably want it as you work through the week on any work, and you'll also probably want it the day you take your quiz. So a sub n would equal 2.3 is my first term, term 1, plus n minus 1 times my difference, which is negative 0.8. I'm going to multiply that out. So 2.3 minus 0.8n plus 0.8. Make sure you really watch your signs there. Distribute them correctly. So I get negative 0.8n plus 3.1. So there's my general rule. And then let's plug in a sub 15. So negative 0.8 times 15 plus 3.1. And I would end up with negative 8.9. All right, so that's kind of what you're practicing today. Remember, if you're having any questions, please swing through office hours. Otherwise, I will see you tomorrow to talk about the next part. Bye-bye.